Hi everybody, this tutorial is going to be about NSThread, or threading within Cocoa or Cocoa Touch. This tutorial is going to be in the iPhone SDK, but the NSThread is just a general class that's available for pretty much all of the, or I think all of the, the Mac OS X and iPhone SDKs. So threading is useful if you want to run a process basically in the background from your main layer of code or the main thread. It's useful when relying on or waiting on something. For example, if you're trying to download a file off of the internet, but you want to be running code still, like user interface code in your main thread while that's happening, that's where threading comes in. And in the iPhone SDK or in the Mac OS X SDK, it's really simple to do it through NSThread. So I'm going to set up a basic example here that'll show you how to use NSThread and kind of how it's useful. To start off, I'm going to define a method within my my header of the main view controller. By the way, just go ahead and create a project. It can be any type. I'm in a view-based application, but it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to define a method in my header file. Let's call this secondary thread. So that's going to be a method we're going to detach what we say detach from the main thread so that we can run it in the background. So we'll call that secondary thread. So I'll go ahead and actually define that method here. Secondary thread. So in our view did load, make sure to uncomment it. What we can do, first of all, I want to show you what it's like to not thread something. We're going to put an infinite loop within secondary thread so that it never really finishes. We're gonna, and just as an example, right now I'm just going to invoke that method without any kind of threading. So self secondary thread, and then below that you can do like an NSLog or something just for tutorial purposes. I'll use an alert view. So this will be something that's invoked after the method that secondary thread method is called, or later we're gonna do the threading. So init with title, whatever title. This alert view is just to show us that the secondary thread method, is done or whatever. So message, whatever, doesn't really matter. Cancel button title, okay, and other button titles, no. And then alert show, alert release. Okay. So within our secondary thread method, I'm just going to write an infinite loop here, while one, and wait. And just to make it so it doesn't have to run so quickly, and it's just, it's not taking up so much CPU, I'm going to have it sleep a little bit inside of each loop. You don't have to do that if you don't want. So let's go and run that. So we should see that you can notice our view never actually shows up, and that means that because we're not using a thread right now, or we're not detaching the secondary thread method from the main thread, it's hanging up right here. So the interpreter is stuck trying to finish this secondary thread method, which we made it so it will never finish. Now, in a real use application, you shouldn't have an infinite loop like this, but you get the point there. So now what happens if we use an NSThread? So NSThread detach, new thread selector, and this will be a selector, so at selector, secondary thread. To target will be self, because the secondary thread method is within this class. With object, we're not passing any kind of parameters, so nil is fine. So I'll just put an ns log within the secondary thread method just so we can see that we're in there. Yeah, I'll just put a whole bunch of periods. There we go. So now I'm going to run that, and now we should see that the view actually shows up when we run this. Reason being is that it doesn't have to hang up at the secondary thread method. It's running, when we detach this method from the main method, it's running completely independently. Well, I shouldn't say completely independently, but it's running seemingly independently from the main thread. See, so now you can see that our alert view shows up because it's not hung up there. So that's where threads come in, and that's how you use them. Once again, normally within a method like this, like the secondary thread method that we wrote, you would do some kind of like downloading a file off of the internet or something, so that the user can interact with your user interface without having to, without the file being completely done downloading. So just a thing to keep in mind, within the secondary thread, pretty much all of the user interface classes are disabled within the any non-main thread for the iPhone SDK. So if you, for example, had a label and you tried to say, you know, my label dot like text or whatever, or text label dot text or whatever, you couldn't do that. It's considered dangerous by Apple to change the user interface directly from a some kind of secondary thread that's off of the main thread. So what you need to do to fix that is have another method within the class that actually changes the user interface, and it has code to change it. So you'd have like change UI, and then within there, you know, you do like my web view, do something, you know, whatever. And what you can do is NSThread, I'm sorry, I think it's UI application, shared application, perform selector. Yeah, perform selector on main thread. So whatever you do, you need to actually, you would say self perform selector on main thread, and it works pretty much exactly as detach new thread selector, just this time you're running this function back on the main thread. And so you could call this change UI method, for example, pass some kind of string to it or whatever you want, and you could actually change the user interface like that. But once again, you can't change the user interface directly from a secondary thread or a thread that's not the main thread. So that's all for this tutorial. Sorry it was so like theoretical, but I had a hard time finding an example that's really practical. So this is what I came up with really quickly. So thanks for watching, and if you like my videos, please subscribe, rate, comment, or whatever. So thanks for watching.